Since, without fail, I find Will Ferrell to be as funny as open mic night at a German comedy festival, even Elf. No. Especially Elf. And I've never quite gotten his more serious roles. Stranger Than Fiction is the only one I've ever come close to liking, but even that is more of an interesting wasted opportunity than a good film. I tend to give anything bearing his name a wide berth. A trend I have every intention of returning to now that I've seen Holmes and Watson, at time of recording the 97th worst film of all time on IMDb. A film so bad that it received 6 nominations at the 39th Golden Raspberry Awards, infinitely superior to the Oscars in every way, and won 4, including Worst Picture. According to Deadline, after disastrous test screenings, Sony attempted to sell the film to Netflix, which declined, and that to me is an achievement in and of itself, because it's not like there's no mileage in the idea of a comedic take on Sherlock Holmes. I mean, in Sherlock Holmes Baffled, in the year 1900, a 30-second film that shows Holmes bamboozled by a crook with seemingly magical powers of invisibility. He pops up, steals and disappears before Sherlock's eyes. Definitely not what people expected from the logical detective, but it was a recognisable name and a new spin on the character. And they've kept coming throughout the last 120 years, culminating in Holmes and Watson, a film less funny than the phrase, "Honey, we need to talk," uttered at 3 a.m. Now, I would attempt to summarise the plot, but firstly, it's just a loose framing device. Secondly, even IMDb doesn't have a clue. A humorous take on Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic mysteries featuring Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson is all the mecca for movie lovers has. And thirdly, I just don't care. I think there were some noises about someone planning to blow up Queen Victoria in 4 days, but nobody else seemed too bothered, so I didn't see why I should be. The 2 leads waited maybe 30 seconds before deploying the padding and never stopping throughout the film's pathetic 85-minute runtime, which sadly was still far, far too long. 90 minutes if feeling generous enough to include the credits. I'm not, so I won't. And even on a technical level, this film is something of a disaster. Several scenes are out of focus. The editing appears to have been done by a blind person with a blunt meat cleaver, with either major plot holes or some truly awful writing, which meant at several points I had no idea what the immediate goal of Holmes and Watson was within the scene, and how it dealt with the larger objective of stopping the Queen being blown up. But I guess almost no film is without promise, so I guess to the positive, there's no James Corden. The casting of Ralph Fiennes to play Moriarty, who only features in one Holmes story and was never referenced before and since, and somehow has become this massive figure in Holmes mythology, but that's just a personal bugbear, is a really, really good one. I just wish he was in a better film. Similarly, Hugh Laurie as Holmes' brother is not a bad call, but I just want to know what all these actors were doing in this film. Were they blackmailed? Have a weekend free? Have their eye on a new plasma or a parking ticket that needed paying off? I also liked a late plot twist, which could have been interesting in a much, much or even slightly better film, and if they had just leaned into the whole Victorian London of unspecific time thing that the film had, or even going full steampunk, then there could have been a unique aesthetic to this film to help it stand out, instead of giving the impression that the scriptwriter, assuming there even was such a person, not some influential person in Hollywood's untalented relative who was left unattended near a computer, typed their magnum opus and everyone else was too scared to say anything, just typed something after quickly googling things the Victorians did and running with the first 5 things that popped up. Oh look, even an attempt to discuss this film's very, very few good calls, which somehow managed to go south quickly. Nothing much here to celebrate. Riffing off of Guy Ritchie's Holmes in 2018, even back then that was a bad call. What I might charitably call jokes were truly pathetic. Selfie jokes, Watson wearing a hat would make England great again, a 5-minute scene where they've killed Queen Victoria and decided to chop her up and flush her down the loo, which goes nowhere, generates no laughs, and is never referenced again once it's finished. This film has more padding than a bad student's last-minute essay. Not that I know from personal experience. I had a friend at university, very bad at timekeeping. Yes, a friend. I mean, I fully understand why this film had so many walkouts when it played on the silver screen, but I couldn't walk out. It was already inside my house. Parodies of Ghost happen out of nowhere. Billy Zane turns up for a puzzling 20 years too late cameo because of course Titanic is in this film, but by then I'd checked out and couldn't bring myself to care. I mean, the filmmakers clearly didn't, so why should I? Look, I don't want to drag this out, so I'll just say that Holmes and Watson was a spectacularly unpleasant viewing experience that I knew I wouldn't like going in, and I didn't. It's not the worst film I've ever seen, but it might be among the laziest. I mean, when you can't even be bothered to keep the camera in focus, something even student films manage to do, then frankly, you deserve the IMDb bottom 100. People who somehow enjoy Ferrell's shtick are already going to have other films to watch, and I'm going back to never again under any circumstances interacting with anything bearing Will Ferrell's name. If you want a Holmes comedy, can I recommend 1988 Without a Clue? It's no masterpiece, but it's an interesting and slightly amusing spin on Holmes. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to deduce the location of the nearest beer. I'll see you next time. So this is a bomb. do not see this film under any circumstances. But what do you guys think? And what is your favourite comedic take on something that's normally taken seriously? Comment below, let me know. I'm Daniel, been a donkey. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe.